My name is Elena Whitmore, and I'm 36 years old. If you've ever had a sibling who made your entire life feel like one long competition, you'll understand this story. I'm standing in my parents' backyard in Asheville, North Carolina, watching my older sister Sabrina flutter around in a designer sundress, calling everyone's attention to something important she's about to announce. And I already know it's going to be about me. It always is. Growing up with Sabrina meant never getting to just be. I was 2 years younger, quieter, more practical. She was the golden child. Loud, beautiful, theatrical, and always thirsty for praise. Our parents raised us with typical middle-class values. Work hard, be honest, save your money. But somehow, those values landed differently with each of us. I took them to heart. Sabrina twisted them into a script for performance. By age 13, I was doing my own laundry and saving babysitting money for college. Sabrina, on the other hand, was sneaking into Mom's closet and borrowing clothes she'd returned stained or ripped. She wasn't malicious, at least not back then, just fixated on how she looked to the world. The first time she stole credit for my work, I was 10. I'd stayed up for 3 nights building a solar system model with hand-painted planets. My teacher called it exceptional. But at open house, Sabrina told every adult in earshot, I helped her with the painting. She's not good at detail. I froze. I remember staring at her, too stunned to speak. That moment would define our relationship for years to come. She attacks, I retreat. In high school, I focused on academics. I joined clubs, earned scholarships, mapped out my career plan with color-coded notebooks. Sabrina dropped out of community college in her second semester and worked briefly at a boutique before moving back home. Every Thanksgiving, she managed to find ways to twist the spotlight. When I was accepted into a competitive entrepreneurship incubator, she told our cousins she'd pushed me to apply. When I made my first big product line deal, she posted a picture of us together with the caption, "So proud of my mentee." Mentee? I'd built my business from the ground up with 16-hour days, ramen noodles, and cold calls to sustainable suppliers around the world. But to the rest of the family, Sabrina was this glitzy, big-hearted older sister who always supported me. She was the expert at manipulating a narrative. And I let her, for decades, because I didn't want the conflict. I didn't want to seem petty. I didn't want to feed her drama, but that all changed the day she tried to destroy my reputation in front of 40 relatives with one sentence. 3 years ago, during a rare, peaceful summer trip to Lake Jocassee, Sabrina became obsessed with a luxury lakefront home. 5 bedrooms, a private dock, sweeping water views. She took photos of every corner during an open house and told anyone who would listen it was her dream home. Every family event since then included some mention of, "When I get my lake house," or "I already know what chairs I want on the porch." What she didn't know was that while she dreamed out loud, I built in silence. I built my company, Everkind Living, a sustainable lifestyle brand, from my tiny studio apartment with 0 outside investors. By year 3, I had 12 employees and consistent revenue. By year 5, I was listed in a business magazine's top 40 under 40. But I never talked about it at family events. Sabrina had taught me not to. She twisted my success into her stage props. So I let her live in her dream. I stayed in mine. But last fall, we hit a rough patch. One of my primary overseas suppliers shut down with 0 notice, and a major platform changed its algorithm overnight. Traffic tanked. Orders delayed. Refunds skyrocketed. I had to take out a short-term loan, scale back hiring, and move fast to avoid disaster. It was stressful. But it wasn't a collapse. I didn't tell anyone, except one person, my cousin Aria, a CPA who'd always had my back. She helped me restructure some of the debt. I kept everything else private. That's when I caught Sabrina snooping. She had stopped by to drop off a few magazines she thought I'd enjoy, and while I stepped into the kitchen, she wandered into my home office. I walked back in to find her flipping through a stack of folders. She played it off with a laugh. "Oh, I was just curious about your vision board." A week later, I found out she'd told our aunt I was in financial distress. I ignored it. I told myself she didn't understand what she'd seen. Then came the twist I didn't expect. The lake house, her lake house, came back on the market. Reduced price, motivated seller. And suddenly, I had a choice to make. I remember sitting up late one night staring at the listing on my screen, the old ache in my chest, the one that flared up every time Sabrina humiliated me, burned hot. Was this petty? Maybe. Was it a terrible financial decision? Possibly. But the truth was, I wanted it. Not just to prove something. I wanted a place that was mine. Quiet, strong, undeniably earned. And I had the capital. Barely. So I moved. Quietly. I created an LLC to keep my name off public records. Worked with a realtor in Lake Jocassee. Negotiated a fast close. Liquidated a chunk of my investment portfolio and made a cash offer. The closing date? The same weekend as the Whitmore family's annual summer reunion. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I packed my bags for Asheville, I tucked the signed closing documents into my bag. In my phone sat a single unread message from the real estate agent. Final walkthrough confirmed. 9 a.m. Saturday. I had never told Sabrina, never hinted. She was about to announce something at the reunion, probably at my expense, but she had no idea the lake house she worshipped was already mine. And I was about to watch her face when she found out. As I drove down the winding highway to Asheville, I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. Not just because I knew Sabrina had something planned for the reunion, but because I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. Buying the lake house had started as an emotional impulse, a reaction to years of passive aggression, public humiliation, and stolen credit. But now, after the paperwork was signed and the funds wired, the weight of the decision sat heavy on my chest. I'd put nearly all my liquid assets into this. My emergency fund? Gone. Half my retirement portfolio? Liquidated. Cash on hand? Just enough to keep the lights on at Everkind for the next quarter. It was a calculated risk, but still a risk. I hadn't told anyone, not even Aria, my cousin and CPA, who had walked me through a difficult refinancing process just a few months earlier. She would have advised caution, and I didn't want caution. I wanted clarity, control. For once in my life, I wanted to do something for myself that Sabrina couldn't touch. I had one more night to wait before the keys would officially be mine. One night to survive whatever Sabrina had planned at the reunion. As I pulled up to my parents' colonial-style home in Asheville, the front lawn was already filled with folding chairs, mason jar centerpieces, and enough lawn games to entertain 3 generations of Whitmores. This wasn't just a cookout. It was a production. My mother thrived on these gatherings. My dad? Not so much. He preferred to linger by the grill or escape indoors with a crossword puzzle. I parked, took a deep breath, and opened the trunk to retrieve a tray of Capri's skewers, my assigned appetizer. Every year I brought the same thing. Reliable, predictable, unthreatening. That's what I had always tried to be around Sabrina. Small enough not to provoke her, successful enough not to feel erased. My mom came rushing over in her linen apron, arms outstretched. "Elena, sweetheart, you're here." She pulled me into a tight hug and whispered, "Everyone's already talking about Sabrina's surprise announcement. She's been acting mysterious all morning." Then she added with a chuckle, "You know how she loves a big reveal." Yeah, I knew. Inside, I passed through hugs, air kisses, and a handful of cousins asking about new products from Everkind. A few mentioned they'd seen my feature in an online eco-living magazine. It should have been validating, but I felt disconnected. like I was moving through a story that wasn't mine anymore. Then I saw Sabrina. She was near the drink station, laughing just a little too loudly, a glass of Prosecco in hand. Her outfit was immaculate. Cream linen pantsuit, bold gold accessories, and high heels entirely impractical for a backyard barbecue. She looked like she was auditioning for a real estate commercial. She saw me and waved with an over-the-top grin. "Elena, you made it." She kissed the air next to my cheek and squeezed my shoulders a little too tightly. "I was just telling Aunt Donna about your business. So brave of you to keep pushing through," she said with a sympathetic look, voice just loud enough for others nearby to hear. I blinked. "Excuse me?" She leaned in closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't worry, I'm not saying anything bad. Just that you've been facing challenges. I mean, everyone knows about the bankruptcy by now." I froze. "What did you say?" Her eyes sparkled with faux concern. "Oh, Elena, relax. It's not a crime to fail. That's what family's for, support. You're still invited to my place if you need to regroup." My jaw clenched. My heart hammered against my ribs. So it wasn't just a vague rumor. She had told people. She had twisted those contingency papers into proof of my downfall. "You don't know what you're talking about," I said, barely managing to keep my voice level. She sipped her drink. "We'll see. We'll see." I excused myself and stepped behind the house, into the shade of the garden shed. I checked my phone. A message from the real estate agent was waiting. "Paperwork processed. You'll get the keys at 9:15 a.m. tomorrow. Congratulations." I closed my eyes and let the breeze hit my face. Tomorrow, I would own the one thing Sabrina had obsessed over for 3 years, not out of spite, out of necessity. A clean line between what had been and what I was no longer willing to tolerate. I returned to the gathering, pretending not to notice the sideways glances or whispers that followed me. When lunch was served, I found my seat, right across from Sabrina. Of course, Mom's seating charts always seemed to pair us like twin exhibits at a zoo. Sabrina launched into a dramatic retelling of her spontaneous weekend in Charleston, peppering the story with references to designer brands and her investor friend, who might be looking for business opportunities soon. Then she leaned toward me with a syrupy smile. "How's Everkind these days? Still fighting those algorithms?" I gave a polite smile. "We're adapting. It's not the first challenge we've faced." "Oh, good," she said, taking a delicate bite of her salad. "Because everyone was so shocked to hear you'd filed for bankruptcy. You really should have said something sooner." "I didn't file," I said, loud enough for a few nearby relatives to hear. Sabrina blinked, then looked wounded. "Oh, honey, there's no need to be embarrassed. We're all just trying to help." I turned away, forcing my expression into calm neutrality. This was her game. But I wasn't playing anymore. As dessert neared, Uncle Jim pulled me aside to offer job search tips. Aunt Margaret handed me a flyer for a direct sales company she'd just joined. Cousin Layla asked if I'd considered going back to school for something stable. I kept smiling, nodding, accepting pamphlets and condescension in equal measure. Then came the clink of a spoon against glass. Sabrina stood at the head of the table, drink in hand, perfectly poised. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" My chest tightened. She was doing it. The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, and then toward me. "I just want to take a moment to talk about something important," she began. "You may have noticed Elena seems a little quiet today. That's because she's going through something hard, and I think as a family, we need to support her." She turned to me with faux sympathy and said it. "Elena's business has gone bankrupt." Gasps. Murmurs. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's brow furrowed. Sabrina continued. "She's lost her warehouse, her inventory, everything. I found the documents last week, and I knew I couldn't stay silent. She needs our help. I've already offered her my spare bedroom until she gets back on her feet. The room swam around me. I saw Arya's eyes widen in disbelief. My hand curled tightly around my wine glass. My throat felt dry. I stood, willing my voice not to shake. "Thank you for your concern," I said evenly. "But I haven't filed for bankruptcy. My business is going through restructuring, yes, but I'm not bankrupt. And I'm certainly not moving in with Sabrina." The silence was deafening. Sabrina's face faltered just slightly, but she recovered with a pitying shrug. "Well, denial is part of the process," she said, smiling at the crowd. "I just wanted everyone to know what's happening." I walked away without another word. I didn't owe her, or anyone, an explanation. Because tomorrow, I'd hold the keys to her fantasy, and she wouldn't see it coming. I sat on the edge of my old twin bed that night, in the same childhood bedroom where I once dreamed about having a corner office, a company I built from scratch, and a life where I never had to compete for attention again. Instead, I was 36 years old, curled up under a faded quilt, trying to process what had just happened at the reunion. Sabrina had publicly announced my supposed bankruptcy. She didn't just share a vague concern. She delivered a rehearsed monologue with dramatic pauses, quivering lips, and strategic glances, painting me as a fallen businesswoman too ashamed to ask for help. Then she positioned herself as the magnanimous sister swooping in with housing, job referrals, and hand-me-down blazers for interviews. The worst part, most of my extended family believed her. They didn't question how she got access to legal documents. They didn't ask me directly. They just assumed Sabrina's narrative was true because she said it confidently and with crocodile tears in her eyes. In a single afternoon, she had reduced a decade of grit, sweat, and strategy into a sob story starring her as the savior. The next morning, I was up by 6:30. I dressed with intention. Navy slacks, a white button-down shirt, low heels, calm, professional, unapologetic. Downstairs, my dad was already at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and working through the Sunday crossword. He glanced up. "You're dressed up?" "I have a meeting," I said, pouring myself a cup. His brow furrowed. "Business meeting? On a Sunday?" I took a sip. "A property closing." That got his attention. He set the pen down. "Elena, about yesterday." I stopped him gently. "Dad, I need you to hear me. I am not bankrupt. My business faced a temporary issue, but I'm recovering. And those documents Sabrina mentioned? They were draft contingency plans my lawyer prepared. Never filed, never submitted." He looked down at the table. "We should have asked you directly." "Yes," I said softly. "You should have." He sighed, rubbed his jaw. "Your mother and we just didn't know what to believe." I gave him a small nod. "I know. But it hurt. You always tell me I'm the responsible one, the reliable one. And yet, when Sabrina says something like that, the whole family believes her instantly." His eyes met mine. For once, they were filled with guilt, not confusion. "You're right. We've enabled her behavior for too long." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from either parent, and in that moment, I realized I didn't need more. I just needed to act. I left at 7:30 and drove the 2 hours south toward Lake Jocassee. The road curled through forested hills, morning light pouring through pine trees. As I approached the lake, my heartbeat slowed. The nervous energy faded. This was my sanctuary, my clean slate. At exactly 9 a.m., I walked into the real estate office, folder in hand. The agent, a brisk but kind woman named Kelly Tran, greeted me with a smile. "Ms. Whitmore, everything's ready." The signing took less than an hour. Dozens of initials, a wire transfer confirmation, and finally, 3 sets of keys placed in my hand. "Congratulations," Kelly said. You own a piece of paradise. I walked out with the keys tucked in my blazer pocket. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. The lake house sat just 5 minutes away on a gentle hill with a sweeping view of the water. 2 stories of cedar and stone, wraparound porch, a private dock extending into shimmering blue. I parked in the circular driveway, stepped out, and just stood there. 3 years of hearing Sabrina obsess over this property. 3 years of her photos, mood boards, Pinterest pins, and passive-aggressive jabs about how some people dream, others plan. She never imagined I'd be both. I unlocked the front door. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating polished wood floors and soft neutral tones. The previous owners had left behind tasteful furniture. Everything smelled like fresh paint and pine. I walked through each room slowly, running my fingertips along banisters and countertops. Upstairs, the master bedroom looked out across the lake, with a view that could quiet any storm inside you. I didn't just want this house anymore. I needed it. At 10:15, I texted Sabrina. Change of plans. Meet me at 145, 112 Lakeshore Drive. She replied almost instantly, Starbucks isn't at that address. Just use GPS, I sent back. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. I just waited. At exactly 1:42, a red BMW convertible pulled into the driveway. I watched from the porch swing, sipping coffee as she stepped out, confused, glancing at her phone, then back at the house. She wore oversized sunglasses, high-heeled sandals, and a lemon-yellow dress more suited for rooftop brunch than a lakeside visit. When she spotted me, her brows furrowed. She climbed the porch steps slowly, eyes scanning the property. "Whose house is this?" she asked. I motioned to the seat beside me. "Sit. We need to talk." She stayed standing, gaze darting. "Are you house-sitting for someone?" I took another sip. "That's odd. I thought you'd recognize it, considering how many times you've talked about it." Her jaw slackened. She turned back toward the view, then back to me. "Wait, this is the lake house." I nodded. She blinked, stunned. "But it was off the market, then relisted a few weeks ago. How did you even—" "I saw the listing, made an offer, closed this morning." She laughed, short, breathy. "How? You're bankrupt." And there it was, the lie she had told herself, and everyone else. "No, Sabrina, I'm not, and I never was." Her mouth opened, but no words came. I pulled a second mug from the tray beside me and held it out. "Coffee?" She stared at the mug, then at me, then at the house again. Her entire face transformed, from smug confidence to disbelief, to something I hadn't seen in years. Shame. She slowly lowered herself onto the swing beside me. "I saw the paperwork," she said, quieter now. "I didn't just make it up." "You saw documents my lawyer prepared in case I needed to restructure. Standard stuff? Drafts, not filed. You didn't tell me. You didn't ask. You snooped. Then you stood in front of the whole family and humiliated me, without a single conversation." She was silent. The lake lapped gently in the distance. A boat engine buzzed far off across the water. I continued. "You didn't come from concern. You came for control. You told everyone I lost everything, then offered me a place in your spare room like I was a charity case. I thought you needed help? No, Sabrina. You wanted me to need help." That landed. For the first time in a long while, she didn't deflect, didn't interrupt. Just stared out over the lake. After a long pause, she said quietly, "I don't have it together, Elena. I'm 3 months behind on car payments. I maxed out every credit card. My job at the boutique is on the edge. And when I saw those documents, I saw my chance to finally be better at something than you." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I looked over at her. Why didn't you just ask me for help? Because I'm supposed to be the older one, she said. The successful one. But I've been pretending for years, and watching you actually succeed, it makes me feel like a fraud. I sat back, let it settle. Then I said, I didn't buy this house to punish you. I bought it because I was tired of shrinking, of letting you twist the story. I needed something that was mine. She nodded slowly, blinking back tears. So what now? She asked. That depends, I said. On whether you want a sister or a stage. Sabrina didn't answer right away. She just sat there on the porch swing, motionless. Her manicured fingers tightened around the edge of her purse as she stared at the lake stretching beyond the deck. I'm not used to seeing you like this, she said finally. Like what? Unbothered, in control, quietly smug. I let out a dry laugh. This isn't smugness, Sabrina, this is peace. She turned to look at me, eyes narrowing slightly. You've always had that look, even in school, like you knew something the rest of us didn't. I worked for that look, I replied. I earned it. Every long night, every budget spreadsheet, every time I kept my mouth shut to keep the peace. You interpreted that as weakness. And now you own my dream house. There it was, the real sting, not the confrontation, not the truth about her lie, the house, the symbol of everything she thought would complete her image. She had fantasized about this porch, these views, the Instagram-perfect aesthetics that would prop up her illusion of success. And now I was here, coffee in hand, ownership papers signed, her illusion shattered. I didn't buy it to hurt you, I said, setting my mug down. I bought it because I wanted a place that wasn't tangled in your narrative. Somewhere I could go without being someone else's punchline. Sabrina stared ahead. But it was my dream. You don't get to hoard dreams and shame other people for achieving them. Her lips parted slightly like she wanted to object. But she didn't. We sat in silence again, the tension between us softening under the weight of unspoken years. I took a slow breath. I'm willing to share this house with you, I said, but only under 3 conditions. She raised an eyebrow. You're serious? I nodded. 1. No more public humiliation. Ever. If you have something to say, you say it to me. Not at a dinner table, not in front of relatives, not in a group chat. She looked down. Okay. 2. You stop taking credit for things you didn't do. You don't need to prove you're important by rewriting my history. A flash of discomfort crossed her face, but she nodded again. And 3. You tell the family the truth, that what you said about me wasn't just inaccurate. It was a lie. That one landed hard. Her shoulders tensed. Elena, no excuses, no half-truths, full ownership. She looked like she might argue, but instead she exhaled slowly and said, They'll hate me. They won't, I said. But even if they did, it's still the right thing to do. She didn't answer, just sat there, wrestling with her pride. Eventually, she gave a reluctant, quiet, all right. We went inside. I showed her the kitchen, the upstairs bedrooms, the master bath with the skylight. Her voice, once full of commentary and curated praise, had gone quiet. She was absorbing it differently now, not as a set piece in a fantasy, but as a gift she didn't expect to receive. I didn't expect you to forgive me, she said at one point. I'm not sure I have, I admitted. But I'm willing to rebuild something real, if you are. Later that evening, we sat on the back porch again, barefoot, a new pot of coffee between us. The lake shimmered under the sunset, the sky streaked in peach and lavender. You could have used this house to destroy me, she said quietly. You had every reason to. I didn't want to destroy you, I replied. I wanted to stop letting you destroy me. She nodded slowly. Fair. Then she added, I've never actually been this honest with you. It's scary. It gets easier, I said. Truth usually does. We stayed there until the stars came out. She asked if she could come back again, maybe for a weekend. I told her she was welcome, under one condition, that she follow through with the apology. The next morning, I drove back to Asheville. My phone buzzed just as I hit the city limits. A group message from Sabrina. Dear family, what I said at the reunion about Elena's business was not accurate. I made assumptions and shared something I had no right to share. The truth is, Elena's business is healthy and stable. I acted out of jealousy, and I'm sorry to all of you, and especially to her. My heart skipped. I read it twice. No justifications, no dramatics, just an apology. The first real one she'd ever offered. I pulled into my parents' driveway, unsure what to expect. My mom was outside watering the ferns. She looked up. Did you see the message? I did. She paused, then said softly, I'm sorry, honey, for believing her. I stepped onto the porch and hugged her tightly. Thank you. That Friday, we sent out invitations to the entire family, a gathering at the lakehouse, hosted by Elena and Sabrina Whitmore. Some were confused, others suspicious. A few assumed it was a trap for round 2. But what they got instead was transformation. The invitation simply read, Join us at the lake. Elena and Sabrina Whitmore invite you for a weekend gathering. Good food, good company, honest conversation. There were no all-caps headlines or flowery design, no hidden digs. Just a direct, mutual invitation. The responses trickled in slowly. A few relatives were skeptical. Uncle Keith texted me privately. Is this another intervention? Do I need to bring tissues or tequila? I told him, neither. Just curiosity and a decent appetite. By Saturday afternoon, cars lined the narrow drive leading to the house. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees surrounding the lake, and soft music played through outdoor speakers. I wore jeans and a linen blouse, barefoot on the porch, placing citronella candles near the steps while Sabrina, surprisingly dressed down in sandals and a simple summer dress, carried out pitchers of lemonade and trays of roasted vegetable skewers. You made this? I asked, lifting a perfectly plated spread. I watched 3 YouTube videos and burned the first batch. But yeah, she said, mock serious. Actual effort was involved. Noted. When our parents arrived, Mom gasped at the view from the porch. Elena, this house, it's stunning, she whispered. Dad looked around slowly, nodding in silent approval as he ran his fingers along the porch rail. Not exactly what I'd expect from someone filing for bankruptcy. I smiled. Yeah, about that. Before I could finish, Sabrina stepped forward. Her voice was calm but clear. Actually, I asked everyone here today because I have something to say, and I want to say it myself. Conversations around the patio quieted. Plates were set down. Glasses paused mid-air. Sabrina stood at the center of the porch, took a breath, and began. At the family reunion last week, I said something that wasn't true. I told you all that Elena had filed for bankruptcy, that her business was failing, that she needed help. She glanced over at me. It was a lie. A ripple moved through the crowd. Shocked expressions, murmurs of disbelief. But Sabrina didn't flinch. I found a document in her office, something I never should have seen, and I made assumptions. Worse, I shared those assumptions with all of you, without asking her, without confirming anything. And I did it. Not because I was worried, but because I was jealous. And petty. And ashamed that at 38, I was still chasing stability while my younger sister was out here building something real. She looked down, then back up. This house, the one I've talked about for years, Elena bought it. And she didn't do it to spite me. She did it because she's earned it. and because I pushed her to a place where she needed distance from me. The silence stretched. Then she said, "I'm sorry. To all of you. And especially to her." I stood beside her then, not as an opponent, but as someone finally seen. "We invited you here today not for an apology tour," I added, "but to start fresh. This house isn't just an investment. It's a place for truth and healing and, if we're lucky, some amazing family barbecues." That broke the tension. Laughter bubbled. Even our skeptical Aunt Vera, arms crossed tight against her chest, cracked a smile. As the evening unfolded, people approached both of us. Some apologized for believing Sabrina's story. Others simply offered hugs and homemade desserts. Cousin Nathan pulled me aside and said, "For what it's worth, watching you two up there today felt like a sitcom finale, but like the good kind." Sabrina and I stood by the fire pit later, watching flames dance against the rising dusk. "You didn't have to give me this," she said quietly. "The lakehouse, the second chance. After everything, I wouldn't have." "You don't know that," I replied. "Maybe you just needed someone to show you what it looked like first." She was quiet, then asked, "So, do I still get a room here?" I looked over and grinned. "That depends. Did you bring wine?" She held up a bottle. "Pinot Noir and zero sabotage. Then welcome to the lake." In the weeks that followed, Sabrina and I did more than talk. We acted. She sat down with my cousin Arya to build a real budget. We cut up 2 of her credit cards together. She listed half her designer bags online. For the first time in years, she didn't flinch when discussing money. Meanwhile, I focused on stabilizing Everkind. The new supplier I'd found was reliable, responsive, and, most importantly, aligned with our values. The revised marketing campaign we launched to offset algorithm changes actually outperformed our old strategy. Within 6 weeks, we'd recovered 75% of the revenue dip and gained new brand partnerships along the way. One Saturday, I found Sabrina on the dock, legs dangling over the edge, flipping through a worn notebook. "Job search?" I asked. She looked up, squinting at the sun. "Actually, management opening at a boutique in Charleston. Real benefits. Real hours. You going for it?" She nodded slowly. "For once, I think I'm ready to work for something, rather than just look like I already have it." Later that evening, we sat side by side watching the sun dip behind the tree line, 2 sisters quietly rewriting the story everyone thought they knew. The lake house, once a dream Sabrina claimed and I quietly claimed back, had taken on a new meaning. 2 months after that gathering, it was no longer just mine. It was ours. Not in title. My name alone was still on the deed, but in presence, in peace, in the shared memory of a summer that changed everything. The shift wasn't immediate. Sabrina still slipped into old habits sometimes, boasting too much at brunch, interrupting me to finish my sentences. I still caught myself bracing for sabotage every time she walked into a room. But little by little, the tension melted. We were building something new, together. She landed the management role at the boutique in Charleston. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her structure and pride. She stopped calling herself a fashion consultant and started calling herself a manager. I watched her transform in small, honest ways. She cooked more, tracked her spending, even started an Instagram page about rebuilding your life after financial stress. Raw, real, and light years away from her past curated self. As for me, Everkind didn't just recover. It soared. The forced restructuring led to breakthroughs we hadn't anticipated. Our new supplier delivered faster than the old one. A viral post about ethical sourcing brought in a wave of new customers. I rehired the 3 employees I'd let go and added 2 more by fall. But the biggest change was internal. I stopped hiding. At the next family gathering, this time back at the lake house, I talked openly about our rocky quarter. I showed them our wins, our pivots, the strategies that saved us. I stopped letting Sabrina, or anyone, control the version of me they chose to believe. "You're different now," my mom said quietly one evening as we cleared plates off the patio table. "More confident?" I teased. She smiled. "More grounded, like you've stopped waiting for permission to be seen." That landed deep, because it was true. The person I'd been before this summer was someone constantly calculating how not to upset the balance, how to succeed without sounding arrogant, how to make space for Sabrina's ego without letting mine disappear. But I was done hiding. One Sunday morning, Sabrina joined me on the dock with coffee in hand. The lake shimmered with early light. Ducks drifted by lazily near the shore. "I've been thinking about that first reunion," she said, "about how much I wanted you to fail." I didn't flinch. I let her speak. "I think I needed it," she continued, "to prove to myself I wasn't the only one drowning. But you weren't drowning. You were swimming through a storm, and I tried to throw weights at you instead of life vests." I looked over at her. "You've come a long way from the woman who delivered a public eulogy for my business before it even hiccuped." She laughed. "I really was awful, wasn't I?" "You weaponized a lake house," I said with a smirk. She bumped her shoulder into mine. "And you turned it into a sanctuary." We sat in silence, sipping our coffee. Then she asked, "Do you think people like us ever really change?" I considered that. "I think people can grow, if they choose to." She nodded slowly. "Then I choose to." That weekend we hosted a sister weekend at the lake house. Just the two of us. No parents, no cousins, no competition. We painted the guest rooms, reorganized the pantry, cooked recipes from our grandmother's old notebook. Somewhere between the third coat of eggshell paint and our second bottle of wine, she asked if I would help her start a small online shop. Resale fashion with a mission to teach budgeting and sustainability. Not to impress, to empower. I said yes, without hesitation. By fall, the lake house had become the heartbeat of our family. My parents celebrated their 40th anniversary there. Cousins brought their kids to swim off the dock. Sabrina and I turned it into a space not just for ourselves, but for anyone in the family who needed rest, clarity, or reconnection. That Christmas, Uncle Keith gave us a framed photo of the two of us standing on the porch, mugs in hand, wind in our hair. On the bottom, in his scribbled handwriting, Lake Whitmore, where the tide finally turned. Looking back, it's easy to say Sabrina's betrayal lit the match. But it wasn't just her announcement. It was my silence that had let the fire spread for so long. I had spent years being the responsible one, the quiet achiever, the easy daughter. And in doing so, I taught everyone, including her, that I would take the hit if it kept the peace. No more. The lake house didn't fix everything, but it became the setting where something incredible began. Honesty, healing, and finally, equality. Now, when I sit on the dock watching the sun dip low over Lake Jocassee, I don't think about revenge or vindication. I think about legacy, about choosing love over resentment, boundaries over bitterness, growth over ego. And I think about this. Sometimes the moment designed to humiliate you is actually the doorway to reclaiming your voice. Sometimes the sister who tried to break you just needed to see you stand tall to remember how to stand beside you. And sometimes, just sometimes, what starts as a lie told in a backyard ends up being the truth that saves two women from themselves. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever had to rebuild from family betrayal or find strength in silence, drop a comment below and share your journey. I read every single one. And if you're still holding your voice inside, it's time to use it. Thank you for being here. And remember, you don't have to burn the house down to build a better home. You just have to own the keys.